Are you tired of high tenant churn rates and constantly having to find and qualify new tenants? Congratulations. You are one of many, many landlords. New customer acquisition cost is one of the highest costs in any business model. So what if there was a way that you could reduce that cost? Well, here's the good news. There is a way. In this podcast, we cover 4 key ways that you can help retain tenants and decrease the costs for new customer acquisition. When you focus on these 4 things, your tenants will generally choose to stay and renew more often, which means reduced vacancy rates and reduced customer acquisition costs. Hi everybody, my name is Chris, and I want to thank you for joining us for another value-packed TenantCloud podcast. If you want to be a more informed, better educated, and successful landlord, then stay tuned. With over a decade of property management experience, we bring you short and sweet, bite-sized pieces of incredibly valuable property management tidbits in 15 minutes or less. In today's podcast, we wanted to cover 4 key elements to reducing tenant turnover and in turn reducing your overall customer acquisition cost for your rental properties. And we're going to throw in a 5th bonus point in here as well. So stay tuned until the end because it is a key element that you definitely don't want to miss out on. And so the 4 first things we're going to cover is the first one is maintaining a good tenant-landlord relationship. As you know, with these podcasts, these are short 15-minute pieces that we don't want to waste a lot of time on. So we do jump right into it. So the first one, like I said, is maintaining a good tenant-landlord relationship. And it's no secret that communication in any business is always one of the keys to having a healthy business. And that doesn't change when it comes to tenant-landlord relationships. If anything, it becomes even more relevant when it comes to tenants because tenants don't want to feel like a landlord is out of touch or not paying attention to the tenant's needs when it comes to a rental property. So the first thing that you want to make sure is that you have a clear and well-defined channel for communication with your tenants. And so you want to make sure that your tenant knows how to reach you, how to communicate with you, whether that's through an email or through phone calls, through text, or if it's something like in TenantCloud, you have the TC Messenger where the tenant can message you and they can do it through their mobile app and you can message them back and they get notifications on their phone saying, hey, you have a new message, that type of thing. So whatever it is, whatever method you use, you just want to make sure that it's well defined with your tenant so that they know what is your preferred method of contact and maybe vice versa. If you don't have a lot of tenants and you want to customize it to your tenants, maybe even just customizing it around how they like to be reached out to. But having a clear communication channel is definitely one of the top things that you want to make sure you have for your tenants. And it goes a long way in making sure that your tenants are happy with their rental. Now, it is important to note that TenantCloud recently did a survey of tenants that use the TenantCloud platform. And surprisingly enough, and maybe it's not surprising to you, but a lot of tenants actually said that their relationship and their communication with their landlord was actually really great. In fact, it was a really high percentage. I believe it was over 80%. And that'll be published soon with one of our publications. But it was very interesting to see that result that a lot of tenants are actually very happy with their existing landlord or property management company. Now, this is only TenantCloud tenants. This is not people outside of TenantCloud. But it was still a very interesting result of the survey that we found was very, very eye-opening, I would say. And so to help continue to keep that relationship and those good positive vibes with your tenant, you definitely want to make sure that you continue to have a open communication with your tenant and make sure that they know where to interact with you, whether that's online, on the phone, or through text or whatever. The second thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you are taking advantage of technology. And I know this seems kind of like a common sense thing, but you want to make sure that you make it as easy as possible for your tenants to do things like submit a maintenance request or to pay their rent online and to review their lease documents without having to reach out to you to send it to them if they lost their lease, their copy of the lease or something like that. And so you want to make sure that you make it as simple as possible, and removing the need for them to contact you for basic things and being able to do stuff online where they automatically get confirmations of things, of communication, goes a long way towards establishing trust and just convenience for your tenants. And you'll find that a lot of the current generations, those are the things that they demand in a rental, is things like a mobile application, for instance, where they can log online and see all of their invoices and what's outstanding, what's been paid, what's not paid, when their next due date is, being able to submit a quick maintenance request. All of those things are things that the current generations like millennials and Gen Z are really demanding in rentals, on top of a few other things. But those are some really core basic things that they want to be able to do, is have that immediate, convenient access to everything about their rental, and being able to not have to reach out to you constantly to give them information that they could otherwise just be able to look up on real quick in 5 seconds on an application. So that's something to keep in mind, is you want to take advantage of technology and stay up to date on technology when it comes to your rental. Those are things that the current generations really care about. Number 3 is become a maintenance guru. You want to be proactive with home repairs, first of all. What does that mean? That means that you want to maybe do a quarterly, or at the very least an annual inspection of your rental property to make sure that you're catching things even if your tenant hasn't reported them yet. Maybe it's something your tenant isn't aware of. For instance, things like before the winter season kicks in, we published recently an article about things to do to prepare for the winter season. And one of those things was make sure that you are checking the HVAC system to make sure that when your tenant turns on the heat for the first time that year, or the first time in many months, that they don't send you a maintenance request because they smell a burning smell once they turn on the heater. Usually that's due to things like dust buildup on the heater coils. And so if you have done that preventative maintenance and you've been proactive about it, you won't even have that concern from your tenant, because you'll have already had somebody, or yourself, you go over and clean the heater coils and make sure that that smell doesn't even happen. So little things like that go a long way towards just making your tenant's experience just this smooth and just very easy tenant life, where they just don't have to worry about stuff like that, which they shouldn't have to, because let's be honest, that's why they're renting, right? They're renting because it's easier for them to have you take care of stuff, and they can worry about everything else outside of the rental that they already deal with on a daily basis. They pay money to somebody so that they don't have to deal with that stuff. Not only that, but you also want to make sure that you have service professionals on call and people that you can rely on to fix problems within a timely fashion, but not just fix problems in a timely fashion, but doing it right the first time. One of the biggest pains for a lot of tenants is to have something be done, or be told that it's done, and then find out that it's actually not done, or it wasn't done right. In fact, it was done wrong, and now it's caused even more issues. And so you want to make sure that you have reliable service professionals, but also people that get the job done right. And it's difficult as a property manager finding people who not only are reliable in the sense that you can call them and you know that they're going to show up when they say they're going to show up, but also that they do it right. And the third thing is that they treat the tenant space as if it's their own. I can't tell you how many times I had to have conversations with contractors because they would just track dirt into a tenant's apartment and not sweep up after themselves, or not put shoe covers on, or they would cut into the sheetrock to repair a pipe or something, and then they would patch the sheetrock, but when they patched the sheetrock, maybe they just left dust on the floor. They didn't sweep it up from when they had cut it, and things like that. Just simple things that go a long way towards building that rapport with your tenant and just making their experience as a tenant so much better, and removing all of those headaches and unnecessary nuisances, such as coming back to an apartment that a contractor's been in and they've tracked dirt across your carpet. I mean, stuff like that goes a really long way towards helping your tenants feel appreciated, and helping them feel like your rental is the most important thing to you, and taking care of them is extremely important, and it builds that element of trust, and it's hard to find as a tenant, to be honest. And so those little things, like I said, go a long way. So become a maintenance guru. Be all about maintenance. Make sure that the contractors you're bringing into your rentals are quality contractors and that your tenants are being treated like royalty. I guarantee it will go a long way for retaining those residents. Number 4 is know what your tenants look for. A lot of renters would love to have things like parking spots next to the rental, or garages, or access to facilities for working out, such as gyms or kickboxing or things like that, or allowing pets in a rental. It can be hard as a pet owner finding a rental that allows pets, but not just allows pets, but a rental that has a lower barrier of entry to get into the rental because of lower deposits or lower pet fees. Because it's crazy how many rentals there are that do allow pets, but the cost just to get your pets in the door is so exorbitant, it's prohibitive. And so I feel like a lot of tenants are actually hiding their pets, and we've actually published articles about this. There's actually a lot of tenants, well over 1/3 of tenants are actually hiding their pets from the property management company because it's so expensive to get a pet into a place. Even if the place accepts pets, the cost to do so is just so high that it really is prohibitive, and people can't afford it, or it's just the cost is just so crazy they refuse to pay it. And so as a landlord, you can really help other tenants and help yourself attract tenants and retain tenants longer by offering flexible pet policies, because that is a huge deciding factor. In fact, the current Generation Z, is quickly becoming one of the largest pet owning populations and pet owning renter populations than there's ever been in the history of renters. And so this is a key thing that we actually talk a lot about in a lot of our podcasts and a lot of our blogs, that becoming a pet-centric rental is going to be one of the keys to becoming a successful landlord in the near future, if it's not already. And so the 5th thing that we're going to cover here real quick, and this is our bonus point that we want to make sure that we really hit home on, is it's interesting to note that one of the key things that came back in one of our recent surveys for TenantCloud tenants was the number one most difficult thing they find about rentals or staying in an existing lease and renewing it is that it is too expensive, that the cost increase was too expensive, and that if the cost hadn't gone up, there was a higher chance that they would stay and renew rather than trying to go find some other place because the rental increase was too expensive. And so there are a few people that I know that actually have a policy that they either don't do a rental increase at all when it's time for renewal, or their rental increase is minimal. And so it's important to keep that in mind, that the number one biggest complaint from tenants, according to our TenantCloud survey, is the cost of living is too expensive, or the rental increase at the time of renewal was too much. And so making sure that you are not pushing existing tenants away because you are trying to increase rent by $25 or $35 or $50 a month. And so you have to take that cost into consideration. Is it worth it to get an extra $35 or $50 a month from the current tenant and risk them leaving and then having that turnover cost and any repairs that might have to be done to get the unit ready to move in again? Even if you bill those costs back to the tenant who left, let's say their damages from the existing tenant, are you ever going to see that money? Or if you do, when will you see it? And you have to weigh that cost benefit analysis to see, like, is it actually worth it to try to get this extra money per month? Or should I just renew them at their existing rate and they continue staying and you continue to earn this recurring revenue without having the unit sit for 30, 45, 60, maybe even 90 days, plus on top of that, having to have the turnover cost of doing repairs that you might not ever see the money back for? And just, it's a lot that goes into it. It's not just having to send out the listings and then do the screenings. And there's a lot that goes into losing money every day that you have to try to find a new tenant and every day that your rental sits vacant. And so a lot of landlords are really taking a hard look at, do I really want to do a rental increase, or should I just renew them at what they're currently leasing at today? Because that is a huge factor in why tenants end up leaving their existing rental. It's not really based on our survey. It's not because they're unhappy with their current landlord. That's actually the one thing that is we got back from tenants saying was a really positive factor, was that they had a great relationship with their landlord. The number one thing was the cost of living there was too expensive. The renewal rate was too expensive. So definitely something to keep in mind when your tenants' leases are coming up for expiration. Of course, you have to take other things in your business model into consideration, but definitely keep that in mind, those survey results that we got back from our tenants. So as always, we appreciate you taking the time to listen to this TenantCloud podcast. We know that you have a busy schedule, so we appreciate your time. And if you know of somebody that would benefit from hearing this information, please feel free to share this with them. And also feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps other people on that platform, as one of the largest platforms for podcasts, that helps other people find us and get this information. And so we hope that you have enjoyed this, that you have gotten value out of it, and we appreciate you spending time, and we will look forward to speaking with you next time.